Howdy, aspiring horror authors. It is Sako and the Moon. And we are two aspiring horror authors that are talking about craft and doing movie reviews. In this case, we're doing movie reviews. And today we are going to be experiencing The Haunt.
Which is almost on purpose by accident. Because I don't read well first thing in the morning. And that led us to do both The Hunt and Haunt. One with an A, one with an article. So that confusion at like 8 a.m. threw us off. But it did give us last week's movie review for The Hunt that starred Betty Gilpin and featured our good friend Carl Moore. So you should absolutely get a chance to go look at that one.
Yeah.
There's also going to give us this one, which is The Haunt. Haunt with an A.
Yeah. With an A.
With an A.
So it was, it came out in 2019, straight to Shudder.
Yes.
Written by Woods and Beck at the same time as they did The Quiet Place, which was wildly successful.
Two totally different movies.
Because The Quiet Place was so successful, they felt like they could direct their own movie and have their own movie made at the same time. So that is what Haunt is. We have 4 criteria, 4 categories with little prompts in each category to get us talking. And we start with production.
This is how we grade our movie with 4 stars, and this is how we
4 stars.
This is how we acquire the 4 stars. We discuss first, as you see, production. This, of course, covers art direction, makeup, props, and cinematography.
So I thought the deaths were executed well, no pun intended. And they were actually displayed interestingly, I thought.
They were. They definitely were. These were good kills. These were good kills. Beyond the kill design, and when I say kill design, I mean like the whole thing, like the use of practical effects. You could tell that they use like practical dummies and things like that, like with the pitchfork through the girl's head, the nurse. Between the use of that and knowing when to make certain cuts, when to highlight something and show it off, like what to show, what not to show, when to show it, when not to show it, how to have that impact. I think all that was done very, very well. But what should absolutely not be ignored is the mask design.
The masks were based on creepy vintage masks. Only to reveal heavily modded peoples that they built out of prosthetics. So I thought the makeup that they did for the villains was expertly done. Even though I kind of wish they hadn't used that trope.
I have no problem with it. And I think one of the best parts about it, it's not even so much that it was tropey. I think it was multi-layered. It's that you have these people with an actual mask, right? Devil mask, sort of like a Grandpa Munster mask, a witch mask, ghost that does kind of look like Baked Alaska. Gotta love Mitch's. I liked Mitch. We'll talk about Mitch when we get into characters and such. But the design of the masks was unique. And then to have something underneath the mask to create that secondary layer, it helped tell part of the story that was actually okay. I have issue with some of the story, but we'll get to that when we get to it.
to plot and stuff like
Yeah,
that. Yeah.
well, we're going to spend some time there.
I
But
thought
yeah,
it was cool.
have the mask and the next layer with the prosthetics. I honestly love that. That told good storytelling. It's not like we're just hiding underneath the mask. These weird, crazy people. And I think I understand what you mean with the tropes and sort of a stereotypy thing when it comes to metal people. And like metal people, I mean like fans of heavy metal music and those who do face mods and live sort of like an alternative / extreme lifestyle. Um, there is sort of a stigma that people who listen to metal and do that and love Halloween are all evil and deep, and this does kind of push that. But at the same time, I feel like it's utilizing certain tropes to tell a story without spelling it out. So we don't have a story dump or a lot of exposition. You can just say, we're fucking crazy people, and here we are. And I hope
Some kind of cult. Yeah.
something like that. Yeah, it was kind of weird. The story is kind of convoluted. Again, we got plenty of time to talk about that. But just looking at the aesthetics of the movie, it looks really, really good. I like the
I
costume.
thought the effects, the costumes were, I feel like natural in that the Halloween costumes for the 20-somethings and the costumes for the villains inside the haunt were nicely done.
I think they were appropriately low budget.
And I liked the idea that it was filmed in Kentucky at abandoned locations.
Right outside Cincy.
And so like one of them was a abandoned elementary school,
Something
and
like that, yeah.
another was a dairy where they built the plank lined walkway with the oil on the.
Yeah, the whole thing looks. So if you're thinking it's a bunch of people just building essentially a trap, it looks like a bunch of people gathered together and they just kind of hand built a trap. The opening to the movie actually shows them setting it up with like tripwire and trying to setting some of the traps up, which could mean anything in a haunted house. But I like that it looks that way. Kind of like the opposite of Saw. When you look at Saw, you're thinking, okay, John Kramer and maybe two other people built all of these elaborate devices and traps and rooms and had all this. I'm like, whoa, okay, this seemed a little bit much, even for someone who's an engineer and spent so much time thinking about design like John Kramer. It still seems like a bit of a stretch that John would be able to execute and build all of this while being an actively suffering cancer patient.
Yeah.
And then having a cop and a former drug user as his accomplices. Now, if he had like MIT student like interns or something, I might be able to believe it a little bit easier. But he had like a rogue cop and a recovering drug addict pulling off these elaborate. You would assume that if he's bedridden, got all these elaborate traps. It's hard to believe. In
Yeah.
Haunt, it seems like it's just a bunch of people who are doing a thing. It's a little odd and weird, a little extreme, and it looks like they built it. They pulled it off, but it looks like they built it, and I like that about it. Like I said, it's appropriately low budget. Their costumes didn't seem too elaborate. Like you said, the 20-somethings, the little college students, their costumes look like simple, easy costumes that a college student would pull off and go to a college party wearing. And I especially like two of them had literal bullshit costumes. One had no costume at all. One was like, hey, I was on the baseball team, I got the baseball bat, here I am. I'm not really wearing a costume, I'm wearing my uniform. And I liked that about it. And that made it seem honest.
In the explanation about Harper by Beck and Woods, um, in defense of the abuse storyline.
I was gonna wait
They
till we got to the plot section before we start talking about all that, because
uh,
there's a lot. There's a lot to that. I kind of want to touch on that in the plot section.
okay, like, how do we feel about a star for production?
I'd absolutely give it one. Like I
Okay.
said, everything that they did for what they were aiming for, I feel like they executed. They seemed to pull it off. The camera shots were good, proper editing, the lighting, the color, everything was to my liking. I'd give it a star there.
I have to agree. Absolutely. So let's talk about the writing.
Now, this is where we get into
Uh,
the dialogue, plot, and the pacing. And I want to give a quick synopsis of the movie. And I want to get into this because this is going to be my biggest hang up. This might cost it a star, in my view. Now let's announce that up front. This might cost it a star. So we start off the movie with, like I said, there's a title card sequence where they're setting up stuff in the haunt. But then when you get into the story, someone throws a pumpkin at someone's front door. Right? Halloween could be pranksters, whatever. Turns out to be the abusive boyfriend of our lead character, Harper. His name is Sam. And we have our Harper, and Harper is the girlfriend. She's abused by Sam. She has a bruise on her face. She's covering it with makeup. Her friends are like, I can't believe her boyfriend did this. This guy's not good for her. He's an alcoholic. They need to break up. This isn't good for her. Friends trying to be good friends. They confront her about it. They're like, hey, this is not a good guy for you. You need to get out of this situation. Let's distract you. Let's go to the Halloween party. So they take her to the Halloween party. They go to the Halloween party. We catch up with two more characters. Oh, there's 4 girls. There's Harper, Bailey, and 2 other people, Mallory and like Amanda or something like that. And then they pick up 2 more characters, Evan and Nathan. And then the 6 of them decide to leave the party and go to a haunted house to kind of close the night off. They go to this haunted house that they kind of stumble upon, but it was actually the haunted house that they were trying to get to anyway, which is weird, but I'll let that go. They make some odd turns because they realize someone's following them. We suspect it's Sam. We know it's Sam. He's looking for Harper. They go to this haunt. Haunt's kind of strange, but of course it's a haunt. It's supposed to be strange. They go in and they realize very quickly shit's going sour. And then the goal, of course, is to survive and get out. And that's the basic plot of all this.
Yeah, a bunch of 20-somethings enter a deadly haunt.
More or less. The reason why I went so deep into the beginning is because they have this through line where we are discussing like domestic abuse situations. And I don't want to go too deep into domestic abuse for the sake of the people who may be watching. But at the same time, this is the plot line. This is the through line. And that's why she's out. That's why she's going out. That's the influence. And we have the following truck, which is the boyfriend because he's abusive and controlling. And I don't feel like this, like there's nothing outside the through line that we could have done it without this through line. And
I think the subplot of Harper having her own mask that she wears when other people don't necessarily, and
that's the quote you were getting at that I paused you on. The writers and directors claim that the through line is to show that she wears a mask of someone who's not okay, someone who's going through something and they're hiding it, which is something people do every day. I have my own struggles that I hide from the outside world, or maybe as a father, I hold some of my personal issues to myself as to not negatively impact my children. And, because the kid needs to have the kid's place. And it is what it is. So I understand where they're coming from with that. However, I don't feel as if this subplot, this through line, I don't feel like this aided the story at all. The only other thing we have that Harper's in an abusive relationship. And then we get backstory that her mother was in an abusive relationship with her father. So Harper grew up in an abusive household and then subsequently got into an abusive relationship that she's currently in. And if you think that this is where Harper gains the strength to overcome the abusive boyfriend, this ain't that. If you think that this is the story where it turns out that the abusive boyfriend is in charge of this and is using this to trap Harper and she overcomes her abuser and goes through that sort of an arc, this ain't that. If you think
if you think there's a redemption arc for the abuser, no, this
right, if you
ain't
think that the
that.
abuser comes through and realizes that he almost lost his girlfriend to these terrible, horrible people, and maybe I don't want to be a terrible, horrible person myself, this ain't that. If you think that the father somehow shows himself to be a redeemed person, or that even the mom has overcome the abusive relationship she's in, this ain't that. And because this ain't that, I don't see where that had any place in this, if that makes sense.
There was, as a framework to present the storyline, I felt like it, if you're gonna make it about the abuse, use it to like as part of a character arc for
at
one
the
or
very
two.
least, at the very least, there's even a part where Nathan finds the phones that they've surrendered their phones, and this is important to the ending. They surrender their phones and they fill out release forms, waivers, as they enter the haunt. And the waivers have next of kin contact information, like emergency contact info, so
And
it's
addresses and stuff
yeah.
like
So
that.
if we need to send you somewhere or contact somebody on your behalf, you know who and how. So a release form of sorts, and they surrender their phones at the door. So they don't have their phones. Well, when they find the phones, Nathan sees that Harper had been contacted by her ex and tries to send their current location to the ex so the ex can find them and hopefully save them. Does the ex show up? Yes. Does the ex show up ready to fight? Yes. Is he there to save the day and help Harper? Yes. How long does he live in that situation? About 5 seconds. And then he's dead.
Yeah, they basically they kill him off as soon as he shows up.
Which is fine, because I would find it distasteful to have us cheer on the abusive boyfriend to save the day. I would find that distasteful. For us to cheer on a known abuser without having him come through some arc of some sort, right? I could see if you took some extra time and established that he himself was abused and didn't learn anything different, and or somehow, and then he's trying to overcome some issue of his own. And again, you utilized it for someone's story arc. If that was the case, sure. But I feel like we've just thrown it in here in this movie and that's cheap. And domestic abuse impacts real people every day, all the time. It is not something to play with lightly. So
if you're gonna lean into it, like really lean into it.
Yeah, it's haphazard. Now, this is horror. Let's not get pedantic. This is horror. We're going to touch on some rough situations. We're going to put people into rough things, right? Some movies are not for the sensitive, and most of them are horror, and that's fine. That's what we do. I can write some dark shit, and I have no problem with that. This is not a matter of being, sensitive and whatever word you want to use to call me a snowflake if you want to. This ain't that. But it's a matter of, if you're going to do it with purpose. It's fine to do it, There's a space for it, especially in horror. But if you're gonna, then do it. Go with it. If you're going to use these sensitive, touchy topics that impact people every day in real life, we're talking about abuse of all kinds. We're talking about kidnappings. We're talking about school shootings, even whatever it is you're going to use. Fine, horror has room for it, but do it right. And go all in. Make a purpose for it. Have there be a character arc. Have someone learn their lesson. Don't fetishize something that's dark and evil. We don't need all that. That's what the real world's apparently for. So the fact that they added this as a plot line, as a through line, as sort of like this subplot, the fact that it was involved without actually doing anything.
I dare say that it was a framework for Harper's mental state throughout the movie. And I feel like it wasn't pushed enough if it was going to influence the way she handles what's in the haunt.
And this is where, okay, so let's talk about that real quick. If that's where we're going to go with it, I want Harper to be super scared of her abuser, which would be what would be expected at the beginning of the movie, the beginning of the arc, and let her be so terrified of everything. Let her not be so bold. Like she is very friendly and very comfortable with Nathan, a guy who she just met at the party. She's comfortable around Evan, who is Evan's a great example character. When we first introduced Evan, he's at the party. He's been stood up by his friends who were the rest of his costume. He was a human centipede, and he was the front end, and the other guys backed out. And so when we first introduced Evan, he's mad, throwing a beer, and lashing out because of his friends. No one in particular, just happens to be next to Harper. And in that scene, at that moment, and this is me as a writer and a filmmaker, I would have Harper absolutely shut down. Sound design, I would have that buzzing, everything goes kind of tonal sound, and Harper is like going into herself as she's experiencing that fear again, that she reminiscent of her dad, reminiscent of her boyfriend. That loud abusive behavior should have triggered her, and it didn't. She was just like, oh, there's beer on me, that fucking sucks. And then Nathan was like, hey dude, there's beer on her, calm the fuck down. And he's like, my friends are poopy heads, or whatever they said. And that should have been triggering for her, given the abuse that she's had growing up with her father and currently with her boyfriend. Since Evan should have triggered her, and she should have been uncomfortable with Evan the entire time they were there. Now, I'll just tell you from a writer's standpoint, if we did that and established that at the party, and had her uncomfortable with everything involving Evan, including getting in the car with him, because she didn't know him beforehand. Getting in the car with him should have been some dialogue of apprehension. Splitting up and having her go with Evan should have been some apprehension. And then eventually she learns through, like, let's say, talking to Evan, learning about how he just deals with some issue or whatever. She gets to see it differently, or Sam, something somehow going on to the rest of it. That could have worked. I would have given that an instant star on that, because that would have been a great way of utilizing that arc to influence your character. It did absolutely nothing for me.
Yeah, I have to agree.
As far as like dialogue and pacing, the pacing was okay. The only complaint I have on that would have been, I wish that they would have handed them a map leading into the haunt, so we can see our course from beginning to end, and have reference once we're in it, how much further we're going, how much we've passed, and use this as a framework as sort of like a clock. Your clock in your movie doesn't have to be, or in your story, doesn't have to be an actual clock and doesn't have to tell time. It just has to pace. That's kind of what a clock in our works would do. It paces us. It shows us how much time has passed and how much time we got to go. Countdowns are really big for this exact reason. So if we show the map, where there are maps, you do see maps throughout the movie that the haunt users use. And if they had a map up front to see where they were going, how much further they had left, when they decided to go back, how much further back they had to go. If they had used that to control the pacing, I'd been a little bit happier about it. But that's a minor thing, all things considering. I had a real issue with that plot point, though.
I thought the dialogue, for the most part, seemed natural.
Yeah, I think a little. It's like if this is the dial for natural, it was one notch to the extra. It was one click to the extra. I think they criticized and ridiculed just a hair too much. And that's nitpicky, but like I wouldn't hold it against the movie for that. 5 stars for the shitty ass clown doing shitty ass magic. Like that. Now, can I hear somebody say that? Absolutely. That on top of everything else that they were saying, I think that's just a little extra. It's a little much.
So I dare say maybe no star for the writing.
I can't, and it's 100% because of that subplot. I feel like it could have been used, and it wasn't. There were places the story could have been told without it, and there was places where you could have utilized it to tell the story that you had better and have more character development with your lead star, with your lead character Harper. It was not. There was a missed opportunity with Evan's outburst, and all of that just makes the plot of the domestic abuse pointless to me. So yeah, I can't get.
I argue that it was the flashback that she had to her dad when she was hiding under the bed. I feel like that flashback and the culmination of her experience gave her the gall to lash out and take the assailant's eye out. I still say no star, but I want to say that's basically how the subplot came together.
And I see
in the third act.
I do see that. However, I think that you could have done it without it. You could have had that same situation without it. You could have had Harper just sick and tired of their bullshit because she's been haunted and hunted and chased, and her friends are killed, and that's motivation enough to me to be like, fuck you, dude. Yeah. I'm just like, and then of course you have where the mystery box, the little music box that contained the key, was under the bed, which is where she hid from her dad when her dad abused her mom. And I feel like that's too coincidental for there not to be a personal connection between her and the haunt. If you're going to have Sam involved in the haunt, this whole thing was a ploy to get back at Harper, that would make sense then to utilize it. If they had been stalking her, and this was a whole thing to track her, if they had been stalking her and using this against her, I'd have been cool with that, because then at least it wouldn't be oh wow, that's convenient. It's too convenient. It was.
Yeah, doesn't work. Okay, characterization. So casting, consistency, and POV. As far as POV, we have our abuse victim Harper, who wears a mask every day, and unlike everybody else, and they're consistent with that. They do kind of final girl it.
They do, but again, the consistency is where I have a problem because there isn't like okay, again, dad was abusive, cool. Boyfriend's abusive, cool. Now that means that the two significant men of her life. This is a young relationship, probably her first real serious relationship, right? Because she's an early 20 something. She's like 22, 23. So we'll call it the first real significant relationship of her adult life. We have nothing to say otherwise. So the two significant men in her world who should show her love did not. They've shown her abuse and used fear on her. And again, that scene with Evan, that encounter with Evan, should have been triggering. And that's where I say they start to. I don't believe Harper reacting the way she did, given her backstory. That's how I want to phrase that.
Yeah.
It's. And I don't. I understand that we're using the thing with the mask and like she's putting on a face. She is scared in the car, but that's like the only time she shows real fear. Other than that, she actually does final girl it and gets starts to challenge people and she's the one bracing the door and not cowering down. Again, if you had that devil guy beating on the door and that, again, triggering her like the father should have triggered, the boyfriend should have triggered, like Evan should have triggered, and someone died as a result of her going into herself and being triggered into like a trauma response, if watching her friend die because of that, that should have been a wake-up call. It's that my trauma and my dealing with this cost me the life of one of my friends. That should have been the wake-up call utilized to begin her arc towards Final Girl. Missed opportunity completely. And again, I can't emphasize this enough. It's perfectly fine if you want to use these tropes in horror. Just do it right. And the opportunities were right there. They were literally right there in what we already had.
As far as
consistency, but everything else I'm actually okay with.
Okay. I felt like Nathan had some growth there. In that they kind of reveal, he has the gall to fight back. And succeeds for most of it.
He comes out at the end. And I think he shows her genuine care. He shows her proper attention. And he shows that example of, it's like,
what could be.
This is a nice guy. Here's an example of a nice guy. And that's fine. And if you're using the abusive boyfriend thing to show off the difference between, good guy versus bad guy, the guy you got versus the guy you should have, then you didn't need the dad thing. And I stand by my statement. But as far as like the casting of these actors for these characters, flawless. I had no clue
good
who
casting,
any of them
not shabby acting.
No, it was great acting. They seemed like if I ran into a group of rando early 20s somethings, it'd be these group of people. I feel like I could run into them in line in front of me or behind me at the movie theater, at a haunt, at any sort of an attraction. They'd be at the bar. They'd be the group of kids hanging out in the. I genuinely believe them. Again, outside of that story arc thing, completely throwing that aside, I love these guys. I mean, just enough about them.
In the first 15 minutes of the movie, they give all the character development that they intend on giving the characters.
And there's not a lot, But at the
There's
same
not a
time,
lot, but
you don't ultimately need a lot. It's like these are your good guys. They're going against your bad guys. And
mhm.
I don't need to be in love with Bailey. I don't need to be in love with Mallory. I don't need to even semi like Nathan. I don't need to. Like, that's not required for their arc or for what their story is. It's these are our group of teens or early 20 somethings, these are college people, and they're going to go do a thing. You're on their side. That's established. And honestly, that's enough for the story that they're telling. You know, there's nothing deep. There's not a crazy backstory for everybody. That had been too much. I like these
Mhm.
characters because they're unknowns. It feels more genuine. They play the parts well. I have no issue. And Harper's a good enough character to follow POV style, so I'm cool with that.
Yeah. I thought it interesting that they, as character building and what's the word I'm looking for? Kind of like getting used to acting in a group. They did other haunts as research
Yeah,
for
the
this
cast.
for this role. So the cast would go to these other haunts to kind of as a uh, character building research sort of like fun time
Yeah, to know what it's like to go through one. Yeah.
with the and what's the word I'm looking for? Just having the group get to know each other in that context. I
Yeah,
think
I know what word
I
you're.
think
I
is
can't. I can't pull
important.
the word. I can't pull the word out either. Like my
Yeah,
brain's spacing.
yeah. So
It's like a bonding.
characterization,
It's a bonding thing.
I
Yeah.
thought I could have done without the body mod addition to the villain's culture. I could have done without that.
Okay. So I spent enough time ranting about my plot point issue. What is your issue with the body mod?
Uh,
Let's talk
I've
about
I think it says something negative about the culture that already exists, um, and puts it in a negative light. So people are afraid of that, of body modding to that extent, already,
it.
right?
Yeah. There's some
And
cultural pushback.
there's
And when
some
we talk about body
cultural
modding,
pushback.
we're talking about the people who do like the full body tattoos, like tattoo face, uh,
Subdermal.
the built-in spikes, like creating like lizard ridges or splitting your tongue in half, or those kinds of body, but not like piercings. We're not just talking about that. We're talking about the full-fledged change your body kind of things. Getting like implants under the skin and living your day-to-day life like that. There are people who do that day to day, and they are still you and me's. They are just Jane and Joe Blows. They pay taxes just as much as you and I do. They do different kinds of jobs, but they still have jobs and pay taxes.
Yeah.
They still raise children. They still want. They still abide by laws. They drive cars. Their kids go to the same schools as you, and everybody they feed their kids peanut butter and jelly for lunch. It's fine. Like
Mm-hmm.
they're regular people. So what I'm gathering is because of the already negative stereotype that's on this culture, you are bothered by the representation, and that there's it's already just being kind of like layered upon the already existing stereotype.
Yes. Yes, exactly.
Is there a way
Um,
you think they could have done it differently, done it better? How could they, in your opinion as a writer, how could they have written these characters as they were and still not damage the reputation of the culture more than it already is?
Maybe having one of the villains be the spearhead of the operation, which I guess was the clown.
Yeah, I feel
Maybe?
like the Red Devil should have I feel like he was presented like that, but in the end, kind of the clown at the end, I do feel like he was the guy. He's the older one, so I feel like he was probably the ringleader. The
Yeah, could have
pun,
been. Yeah.
pun implied.
Um, someone that the others would have looked up to.
Yeah,
Um, not the good guys, of course, but the other bad guys would have looked up to that stereotype. And I think that would have been a better use of it, rather than making it like a cult designator. Is
yeah.
that the
Now,
word I'm looking for? Qualifier,
yeah,
like
we'll go with qualified top market. So now, when you look at the people under the masks, as far as the real body mod, the one with the addition was, in my opinion, just the devil. You had Mitch, who had like a burn victim looking kind of face, a face with no features.
the green nose, so that they could do without the nose in
Right,
the
he had like the
movie.
missing
Yeah,
nose. 'Cause this is if you squeeze your nose, people at home, that's just all cartilage. Like your bone's not there. Like this
there's
is
no bone. Yeah,
this is just like all cartilage to give you something to breathe through. Otherwise, it's a hole in your face. There's no nose bone on a skull. So they kind of took the nose away, kind of like he had like his face literally removed. This would be part of his.
they used burn victims as the inspiration for that makeup.
Right, and you have that, and you have the clown, which just looked like extreme clown makeup, kind of
Hmm.
Joker, like '88 Batman Joker esque. You got to clarify your Jokers nowadays. There are so many.
Yeah.
Your Jack Nicholson first Batman movie, Joker esque, where it's like chemical, like impact on the face. So, do you feel that even having just the one character was too much for the impact on the culture?
Mm,
Because I agree with you, representation is important, and
making
having
it
someone,
consistent throughout the cult, and I use that term lightly.
yeah,
Um, I felt like that was unnecessary.
you feel like we
Like,
could have done it the way the other masks were done without adding the body mod person to it. And I could see where his body modifications were not necessary for the plot.
right,
And I don't think now it would have been different if that actor just naturally had those body mods and thought, oh, he's got a
right,
great
but
look
that was
for
a
him.
makeup.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that was so. I think it would have been a different impact if they're just like, hey, you got a great look for horror, which I mean, you know,
yeah,
if it works, it works. And it's like, hey, we want you in our film just as you are. We'll paint you to look a certain way, but essentially what your face is. I think that would have been different if it was just him, because then we would have just been looking at the actor himself.
yeah. I have to agree. Um, so good casting, not shabby acting. Could have done without the body mod thing. Um, not a whole lot of character evolution, though
No,
they
just
sort
kill
it.
fodder.
They still did a little bit with Harper, but
Really.
you really got to look for it.
You do. Now, I'll throw this in here before I ask you about your star. How do you feel about the differences in Mitch and how Mitch was a change of tone when he entered the picture?
Uh, they pretend to be human and operating member of society who understands right and wrong. Uh, earlier, as kind of like a play, a display of of look, I know the rules to the good guys. And then once they decided to make a mark out of Evan, then the gloves were off and they kill Evan. So I don't know how I feel about Mitch.
I feel like the reason I asked you that was because this is the utilization of a character who should be obviously a bad guy, and the way they're like, "Hey, we need help here," and he's like, "Hey,
oh shit, is that person bleeding? Yeah,
you need help? Oh fuck, we gotta get you out of here." It's like, oh
yeah,
well,
I'll
yeah.
help you in a minute. Yeah.
He's like, "Yeah, I need to let me grab something real quick. I'll come to help you." And then it's like, well, you want to go back through the haunt the way you came, but you're almost done. Like, we could it's closer to leave this way, which to me is a logical piece of advice to give someone, especially if you're familiar with it. And I think Mitch played that really, really well. And I think they utilized Mitch to bring the guard down a little bit. And I think it kind of worked because they're like, we're going to make you go between Evan and Nathan as we try to escape out. And I'm going to lead first, and then Nathan's going to be behind you with a weapon. And then Harper's like, I want your keys. And they're like, we want to know your name. And I think it gave them a sense of power, and it gave them a sense of authority, the good guys. Mm-hmm. And that false sense of power is what lulled them in to one, to encourage them to have a little bit more gusto, but then also suckered them in.
Mm-hmm.
Like Mitch gets suckers in Evan at the end. I do like the utilization of that character for Mitch for that reason.
I do like that the play on yes, I'm going to help you, which wasn't his.
Always happens. I love it.
Wasn't his intention at all to begin with. I thought that was a nice. I thought that was a nice touch.
Hook, line, and sinker, got them all.
Especially when that turn, where that right turn where he ushers the good characters through the tunnel, mm-hmm. Only so that he could nail it shut after them instead of following them.
Yeah.
So I thought that was a nice touch. Characterization, because of that subplot and because of the villain culture, I'm gonna say no star.
And this will be the first time we have like a disagreement. I'm okay with giving them a star in this section. I have issue with their consistency. Now, I'll be very clear on that. Mm-hmm. I have issue with the consistency because, again, it goes back to the subplot, and it goes to the fact that there are ways you could utilize this character, and you didn't. There's ways of telling the story, and you didn't. The casting was fine. There was minimal evolution, but for the style of movie, there's not a lot to be expected.
Right.
I have issue with the ending.
Yeah.
There's a lot of issue with the ending. There's a lot of questions with the ending. I was surfing Reddit. I'll save that for like theme tone backstory. But there's not a lot of evolution. The points of view are fine. We're following the kids. We're following our group. But again, the consistency's weird because of the backstory, and they don't really
follow through.
They don't follow through. I feel like if you're going to put this much abuse behind Harper she needs to be triggered by aggressive men.
There is a drawback. They didn't show the drawback to.
There should have been some hesitation. There should have been something. So
there should have been something.
So how about this? I think this will be the half star. If we disagree,
okay,
it's a half star. It's like my agreement and your agreement gives a full star. So if we disagree, it's a half star. I feel like that's fair to the movie. That's fair to the movie. So this is our first half star.
Dun dun dun.
Hey, first half star.
Okay, so last category, last star would be the theme. Mm-hmm. So we talk about the message, we talk about the tone and the mood, and we talk about the backstory, which I think we've talked about it quite a bit.
Yeah, there's not a whole lot extra to add that we haven't already said. So all I'll say is that the mood fits the movie. I'll give it that. The tone fits. It's a dark horror where these kids are destined to die in a haunt. They got,
I thought the tone was consistent.
Everything kind of stays,
and it stuck with me. It stuck with me after the movie was over for a couple of hours. The way they did the kills, the misuse of trust, all of that stuff really kind of got to me, and the tone is usually what sticks with me after a movie is over.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So that alone makes me want to give it a star.
Now, of course, we've kind of dug into backstory a lot, and I don't need to replay into that. But again, because now I'll say this is all about Harper's backstory. Nathan survives, but we don't know nothing about Nathan, so that's fine. We have our final girl, and Nathan he survives and he's at the hospital. But we don't have any backstory for the villains, for the haunt, the setup. We don't have anything to explain the whys, the hows, who they are, what they're doing.
Who, what, where, when, why.
We don't get any of that. Now, there are times when I think it tells the story better to not know.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like,
but it shouldn't be an afterthought. And I feel
think Michael Myers, and you're looking into like part 4 or some parts 4 and 5. When you start getting into the cult and the family with Jamie, and now you're creating this extra backstory, which, like the newer trilogy of Halloween, Halloween and then Kills and Ends, you didn't need Michael Myers is her brother. Oh, there's a niece that he's connected to psychically. Oh, there's a cult that he's risen because of this, that, and the third. You didn't need all that, and those 3 movies showed you that you didn't need all that.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm okay with this not having that backstory for the villains. Mm-hmm. But again, I still have that issue with the backstory of Harper, only because it was not utilized properly in my view. And that, in my opinion, impacts the message. What did anybody learn from
Trust no one and nothing. I am not a fan of haunts to begin with, no matter how severe or benign the haunt might be. And I have been through haunts that were not fun.
I've gone through a couple. This would be a great time for me to give shout out to the people at Malice Manor over in Indiana, because my film group Hallowed Hills, we are doing a couple of projects with them. We've done one already. We got another one in the works. That's what they do. They are a haunted attraction. You can go through them and through their haunt multiple times a year. You can get a good view of their haunt through the Hallowed Hills Productions. Go check out our YouTube page. And I just feel like talking about haunt and not giving a positive shout out to people I'm affiliated with. Now, I've seen their haunt and I've talked to those workers, and they're honestly good people. I know a lot of haunt workers, great people throughout the year. They just love to scare people who like to be scared, and that's fine. But with this haunt, I just don't get there's no message here. Like, Harper was put in a situation where she and or Sam, that's the abusive boyfriend, could have learned something. And I feel like
they were robbed of it.
There's nothing, they didn't learn anything. There's nothing to learn. I can't reflect.
Other than she learned that she was going to get them back.
Yeah. And that was more out of self-preservation. That wasn't like, hey, I'm a badass. That's more like, oh, I don't want my mom to die. So.
Right.
So it's like.
She home aloned that shit. Like.
She did. And it was. And of course, there's a lot of hang up there. There are people who have watched it. Now, mind you, this is 2019, so you go back and look at things like Reddit. This is 4 or 5 years worth of commentary, and people are asking questions like, "How did they get the address?" We've already covered that. That was part of
the waiver. It was part of the waiver. Yeah.
So people said they got the waiver from the police, from the hospital. They didn't. They filled all this stuff out. They volunteered all this information up front. Now, the fact that so many people had that question shows that the writing should have been better. It's something that should have been wrapped up very easily. And all you needed was in that scene where she starts to read the waiver, have conversations about why do they need our addresses? And then have someone say, if something happens to you, we need to know who to contact so that we can get a hold of them. And if we need to call the police and send the police to your home for your sake or to get a hold of your family, we know where to send them. Something as simple as that. One character asking one of the bad guys, having a conversation with one of the good guys would have solved that problem, and nobody would have all these questions this many years later. So that's an issue there. Theme, backstory, and tone's fine. There is no message in the backstory of the father.
I feel like if you're gonna do something like that, really lean into it. It doesn't seem to have anything to do with her character development or the development of the story. If anything, it held the character back.
Yeah. So Harper had the potential. She was set up.
She had potential.
Such a good final girl. There was so much, like, if done differently, I would be looking forward to Harper's involvement in Haunt 2 if there ever was to be one. If she became, I have to make the comparison to Sidney Prescott because that's my product choice. But I'll even throw in Laurie Strode. You know, calm, simple girl at the beginning of the movie, absolute badass by the end. Now, does Harper come across as a badass? Sure, but I mean, she did Home Alone that shit at the end, and then straight up held a gun to his face and pulled the trigger. Boom, hits him with a one-liner and goes. Now, does she turn the haunt on them? Nathan does most of that in the movie. That was a lot more Nathan as far as turning the haunt against the bad guys. That was Nathan.
That was Nathan, not Harper.
Laurie Strode did the work. Sidney Prescott did the work. Harper did the work.
Yeah.
Nathan did the work, and she reaped the benefits by surviving. So the real hero of this should be Nathan. But all we get is we lose Nathan when they escape. Yeah, I mean, we don't lose him like he's still alive. He's at the hospital. He's fine.
That's what I mean. You know, we kind of lose track of what he's doing and how he's recovering.
He's just there, like, oh, your friend's okay. He's in the room next door. We need you to sign these papers. And she's like, papers. and then realizes that, oh, this clown has our addresses. He's coming after us. Probably coming after her because, oh, you fucked up my little haunt. I'll fuck your world up. So
Yeah.
she suspects he's coming after her. No way of knowing when. No way of knowing how. No way of knowing any of that. Turns out to be right. She homes loans to shit. She kills the guy. Is that the end? Yeah, probably.
Probably. Yeah.
But I feel like that's Harper's only redeeming badass moment. The actual real turning, like if she was able to turn things against the people at the haunt, I'd give her like a good. She had great potential to be a good final girl. It's just lost cause. It was lost.
It was lost. Yeah. So no star for theme.
I feel like I want to with the tone and the mood because they managed to keep things in that lull.
I will give you that.
But there's so much working against that it's almost like that by itself. Like there's three things there for a reason, and they only give us like if you had a good message in it, if you utilize the backstory, I could give you more effort. I want to give them the star.
I want to give them the star for the tone, and either way, but I can't.
Not in good faith. I can't.
So, in the four categories, we have a star, a half a star, no star, no star. Is that correct?
That is star, no star, half star, star.
Yeah.
Yeah. Star, no star, half star, star. No. Star, no star, half star, no star. So 1.5 stars.
1.5 stars. So that is tragic because it wasn't a bad movie.
It's not a bad movie. If we added an extra category, which we're not, but if we added an extra category for just enjoyment, hey, it's a good sit down Halloween movie. You put that on a double feature with Escape Room or any other kind of come out, like you could even put that up with
Hell Night or whatever it was. Yeah.
There's suggestions of double featuring that with Hellfest because it came out around the same time.
Hellfest, yeah, that's the one.
I don't think it's extreme enough. Okay, if you're going to watch a movie like 31, like a Rob Zombie 31, this would be your second movie. So if you want to watch a movie that's kind of on the extreme side, like 31, and then watch something that's escapey but a lot more tone so you can sleep at night, like Haunt would be a good secondary movie to throw in there. Or play Haunt first for the,
setting the mood. The
lesser horror extreme crowd, and then let them go off to bed or leave the party while you sit back and watch something like 31 or A House of a Thousand Corpses. I would be fine pairing them. Like the movie's not a bad watch. You can sit down and mindlessly watch this movie and enjoy yourself, have a good time. But if we're
I'm not lying. I'm not lying when I said that it stuck with me for a couple hours. So,
I had no problem watching the movie's fine. I'll watch it. I'd watch it again tomorrow because I watched it again this morning to freshen up for the movie review. I watched it like a week or some odd ago when we were talking about The Hunt. It's not a bad movie. If someone said, "Hey, I'm gonna sit down and watch Haunt," I'm like, "Fuck yeah, I'll watch with you." Yeah, sure.
Yeah, sure.
It's not a bad movie. So don't take our low score as a don't watch. Watch the movie for yourself. Always watch the movie for yourself and get your own opinion of it. It's the only way of doing literally anything. Read the books for yourself. Watch the shows for yourself. Watch the movies for yourself. Get your own opinion, and then come back and talk to us about it. In fact, if you've already seen Hunt with an A, no article, and you have an opinion on it, if you think we're wrong about something, if you like the backstory, that's what the comments are for. You can go ahead and talk about it in the comments. We'll talk about it. I'll talk back to you. Yeah. I'll have a conversation with you.
Hey, there's an email for Sako in the Moon at Gmail. So drop us a line.
Right, let us know.
And if there's enough requests, taking requests, and if you don't agree with our score, like talk with us about it.
Let us know. You know what? I'll even tell you this. If you can give me a good enough argument, we might come back and revisit a movie and use your argument to rescore. I'm not
Yeah,
against it. I'm just a dude. I could be wrong.
yeah,
Maybe there's something I didn't get. I've had that happen a couple of times. I had an opinion of a movie. Someone came back and said, "Hey, if you thought of it like this," I'm like, no, I haven't. Now that you say it like that, I look at it a little bit differently. So, that's okay. I'm okay with that. So, yeah, go ahead. Bring it to us. If you got a different opinion, that's what the comments or sections are for. SakoInTheMoon@gmail.com. Hit us up. Tell us your thoughts. Let us know.
Let us know. But this is the end of our review, basically. So we'll catch you guys later. We'll see you Friday for S.A. Bradley's
Boy, will we.
interview. My
Boy.
boy.
I love S.A. Bradley. He's not only is he a great author, but he's a wealth of knowledge. If you love horror knowledge, this is a guy you're going to want to know, meet, follow. You're going to want to listen to his podcast, Hellbent for Horror. You're going to want to read his book, Screaming for Pleasure. You are going to want to get everything about this guy. He's a great dude. It's been an honor to meet. You'll get to meet him on Friday when we interview him on Sako on the Moon.
Yes. Until Friday, we will catch you guys on the flip side.
We're out.